Next podcast with Chris and Todd.
I want to start this podcast, but the hard part for me is all I can think about is Nacho Libre. Like Easter, we're going to talk about Easter, and in my head, have you not understand the Easters? And I got a lot of churchy opportunities and things like that, and because it's just one of our favorite movies, but it is one of the catalytic moments on the calendar for the church, and Easter is right around the corner. It is unbelievable. Like what did we joke the other day in staff meeting? Today, as of today of filming this, we're 3 weeks away from our first service.
Yep.
Which you and I, dealing with volunteers and preparation and plans, are going, that's 3 weeks, and there's still things that need to get done and need to happen. So preparing your heart and everything that goes along with it. But it's exciting. Yeah. It's exciting as well, going, man, we're going to have some really great moments to celebrate the risen Lord, to celebrate our relationship, to celebrate life change, to celebrate just, man, people may be hearing about Jesus for the first time. And I already got to have some conversations even this morning with some friends. Hey, did you get your tickets yet? Did you get your tickets? And, and just being able to hear them go, no, I haven't. Or, hey, we have to have a powwow about that. And I'm like, what powwow do you need? Just pick a day and let's go. Come on. Like,
it's a whole family thing.
Just say yes and let's move on, you know. But Easter's exciting, and we're just wanting to take a moment right now to kind of talk about Easter and the different things that we prepare and get ready for. And
I think you'll hear through this one of just as a church, yes, it's such a big deal getting ready for it. We start planning for it all the way back and, beginning of the year almost.
Absolutely.
We get done with Christmas and then it's like, okay, Easter's not too far away. And so, and planning out our service, and on top of that, prepping for, one of our biggest services.
Absolutely.
Weekends of the whole year, of going from, hey, we're a church that usually has, 2,000, 2,500 on a weekend to we may have 6,000.
Yeah. Which is unbelievable to think about and exciting.
It's a beautiful and an incredible thing to be a part of. And so it's awesome to see it. But then in the same breath, you're also like, here's what I think, talking about all that, but it is, especially as a pastor, but also I think it's just another holiday, or it's just another weekend. And so trying to make sure, yes, we could do like a family brunch or whatever within this. Sometimes that's hard for our families. We're like, we get done with Easter and we're like, I need a nap.
Yeah, a long nap. It's like hibernation.
Yes.
Like, let's just go in after 7 services or even, longer days.
Or you're trying to figure out how to do an Easter egg hunt, you know, those kind of things. And so, but from a spiritual standpoint, is going, have I really kind of walked through this week?
Yeah, absolutely.
And making sure Easter is just not another week.
Well, yeah, and that you've heard the tradition because you talk about Lent and this idea of the 40 days before Easter, taking a time, there's an Ash Wednesday where the palm branches of the year before are burned, and then in the Catholic tradition, putting a cross on your forehead, ashes on your forehead. But just this reality of depriving yourself of something, just for 40 days to focus in and draw attention to.
And it's 40 days leading up to Easter.
Leading up to Easter. And just this opportunity to say, okay, is there something that's getting in the way or something that I could say no to so that in turn I could spend time focusing in? And maybe it's a special time of prayer. Maybe it's letting go of, hey, I'm going to give up coffee or the coffee shop, or I'm going to give up pastries or a TV show. I remember one time in college, my dad and I had a conversation, and he's like, hey, let's do something for Lent this year.
Yeah.
And we gave up TV after 10 o'clock.
Nice.
In college, I didn't realize when I said yes to that how much Sports Center I watched after 10 o'clock. And the dumb part was you watched the same Sports Center like 3 times, but you're like, that dunk looks even better on the third time.
Yes.
But really, even in this moment, us as a family, we just had some casual conversation that we were like, hey, let's just kind of focus our attention and our conversation into continuing to be more encouraging in moments like that. And just, for me personally, just saying no to some things that usually say yes to, so that I can be like, I don't want that to be a distraction as I prepare my heart
Yeah.
for Easter, and specifically praying for some friends that I really want to see at Easter.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those I was excited to hear is actually, I think he already has his ticket. So
That's awesome.
I'm stoked about that and what that could mean for his relationship. But not just that I need or want to see the results. For him to go was a lot of affirmation that, man, God's working.
Yep.
And I don't want to miss areas where God's working or get in the way, because I want my way to come out of that. And I think that's a dangerous place to be like, well, God, I did this for you. Why aren't you making him want to do that? And he's got to want it. And, we've talked about walls being put up and all, so many of our friends that don't know Jesus have those walls, or they have hurt. And I think the beauty of all of that is that maybe at Easter, people are more open to saying yes more than any other time. And I don't think that's a cliche conversation. I think that's a realistic conversation.
Yeah.
So.
I think the Lent part of it is a great idea of just trying to be able to, hey, am I going to give up something?
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is, when you read the Bible, especially going through John, almost starting in chapter 12, all the way through 21, and 20 and 20, 21 might be a little bit longer, but still not too far. It all happens within a week.
Oh, it's super fast.
All that is happening. Like, we are sitting in a long conversation in some of it. And some of that, I'm like, a lot of that's even happening in like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, yep.
But you've got Palm Sunday where Jesus is walking into Jerusalem and everybody's praising him, worshiping him.
It is a party.
And
Literally.
he's coming in because they're celebrating Passover.
Yep.
And then they sit down to have Passover. So you got communion happening in there. He washes the disciples' feet even before then.
Yeah.
And so then you've got, which then that meal is known as like Good Friday kind of deal. Well, not Good Friday in that sense, but that's Jesus passing away.
Yeah.
But it's just like that's happening on Thursday.
Yeah.
And then Friday, this is where he passes away. Saturday, they're all sitting in this darkness. What do we do?
Yeah. This unknown. This sense that we have no idea what's about, and they didn't like that.
Right.
I think that's the hardest part for us, right? In this conversation about Easter, is we know what's going to happen. He's going to rise again. It's going to be amazing. And they were there going, first time for you? Yeah, first time for me. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, right. Right. And then he raises from the grave on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's just this, and it would have been, because their Sabbath day would have been Saturday.
Yeah. Yep.
And so they're all, I just picture that Sabbath.
Yeah.
Like, as disciples, like, he's dead.
Well, yeah, they were already used, like you said, Sabbath. Like, they were already used to doing nothing on Saturday anyway.
Right. So now they have to sit in that all day.
You sit in death of the guy that you've been with for 3 years doing everything with.
Exactly. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And what they all experience, I mean, they're having this meal where he's sharing what communion's going to look like moving forward, but they don't know the full weight of all that. But of course we do, because we've years later. And then you've got the Judas coming and betraying him that night.
Yep.
It's just, and we're all like, oh, it's happening so fast.
Yeah, I would agree. It's funny that we chose to talk about this today, because I was just in Matthew in my devotions today. And it was that part where he's before Pilate, and just that weird sense of Pilate had every ability to say, no, I don't believe you. He's done nothing wrong. And he did. He said he's done nothing wrong. Even his wife. Right. That's the interesting part. And his wife had a dream and said, don't have anything to do with this man, and just, then he comes out and says, I find him innocent. What do you want me to do with him? Right. And they're like, crucify him. And I can't imagine, like, if the disciples were in that crowd and they're hearing crucify him, like, have you ever had those moments where you've wanted to say something or yell something and you just can't?
Even if you could, like, it's not going to be heard. Like,
I know.
They're so loud.
Yeah. And they're just that tension that I think that's the thing that has become more real to me in my later years and growing in faith, is just all the tension that surrounded the moment at like the garden where Judas gave Jesus the kiss and dragging him away. And my favorite line from that whole garden scene is like, been in the temple every day.
Right.
Why didn't you come get me then? Why was swords now, you know?
Right.
And how all that tension was orchestrated and came to play. So, yeah.
And so for me, I would just encourage you as you think through, how do I prepare for Easter in some senses, is I was like, I think, one, take advantage of reading the Gospels.
Yep,
read
absolutely.
one of them and I'm saying not reading the whole thing, but read leading up to it.
Yep.
And just take in the moments of going, okay, can I put myself in that person's shoes a little bit?
Yeah.
Because it's funny you say I'm reading through John and like just reading this morning of like the resurrection part of it, and Mary Magdalene. It's interesting how the story kind of lays out, because she goes to the tomb and is like, can't find him.
Yeah.
So then she sprints back.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the disciples, and they come running.
And they didn't believe her.
Yeah, they were like, I don't know about that. And they're all just going, somebody took her.
Yeah.
And so, and John, I think it's like, it's the disciple whom Jesus loved. I'm like, John. Thanks, John.
Oh, it's John again.
Yes, yeah. Thanks, John. And so John gets to the thing and sees like the wrapping piece of it. Peter just goes straight in and finds what was kind of like this towel that was covering his head.
Yes.
And so John sits there with the wrapping and goes like, oh man, I think he wrote. Like it says he began to believe in that moment. Peter is kind of looking for, okay, where did they take him? What's going on? And so Mary comes back, and so she lingers. Mary Magdalene just lingers, and it's just like, man, I don't know where, like, and just is emotionally all over the place, like any of us would have been.
Yep.
And so she sees angels all of a sudden, which I'm like, did the disciples leave at this point? Like, did they, like, it showed the order is fascinating.
Yes, it is.
But she gets to experience the angels. They're like, why are you sad? All that kind of stuff. Then Jesus is there.
Yeah.
She thinks he's the gardener, and he's like, "Hey, and if you
tell me where you took him, let's go.
Tell me where you took him." And he says Mary,
yeah,
because he said other words before this, but he says Mary, and that's when it clicks for her. Yeah. And then of course, like Jesus disappears, and it's just like come on,
why do you always do that to me?
So then she sprints again, back to the disciples and goes, "No, I need to tell you what really happened."
Yeah. Yeah.
He raised from the grave, like he's alive.
I think there's an important aspect in there that we have to pay attention to, and I think we don't do it very well. He lingered. And I think there's a tension when I say linger, right? Like sometimes when we linger somewhere, it feels like we're trying to force something. Right. But I think there are definitely moments in our relationship with Jesus where we have to linger.
Yep.
And like I think so many times, take for example your morning devotions.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easy to be like, doom, check, and I check that off, and good, let's get out of the way, let's go with the day. Right. Rather than just like, even caught myself this morning after one of them, because sometimes I listen to my devotions, and something was read, and I just sat there, and I'm like, oh, thanks for that.
Yep.
That was what I needed, and I think Mary teaches us that, like. Everybody else left. They're like, wait, I need to, and all of us are different processors, but I need to process this for a second.
Well, you see even the difference between John and Peter.
Yep.
John's like, I just need to stand outside the tomb and look at these like linens and like, what just wrapping? Like, what is going on? Peter's like, I need information.
Let's go.
I need a detective is turned in. Like, I need to figure out what happened here.
Yeah.
And so, and so part of me is like, what I would recommend the best you can, and I know I need to get better at this, is going like on Good Friday, like sitting in like he died.
Yeah.
Like, and letting that tension being like, do I recognize my sin put him there?
Yeah.
One of those songs, like How Deep the Father's Love, there's this part is like, I hear my mocking voice crying out.
Yep.
And so it was my shame that nailed him there. Like that piece of it has always been like, oh, it is hard for me to sing those words. But I have to remind myself each time we get to this
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
That's what Good Friday reminds us of.
Yeah, and I think you can get experience. Not that you have to get experiential, but sometimes I think putting yourself in a different place or a different position is essential. Like maybe you want to go find a place where you know there's a cross in Rapid City, or you
Right.
want to go to a cemetery
Correct.
and just be like, maybe it's a great time to visit someone that's passed away, and you can be like, hey,
Yeah.
this death was real. This physical death of Jesus, and it's been documented. And
Yeah.
we've talked about it in church, like the torture that took place, and the
Yes.
real aspect of Roman torture was so heinous.
It was awful.
Oh my goodness!
They
you
knew
know,
how to beat somebody with a whip.
within an inch of their life.
That they were just like,
Yeah.
all right, 40 slashes, they
Yep.
die, so let's
Yeah.
do 39.
Yeah,
You're like, what?
And then what would it look like to that Saturday or a Saturday leading up to Easter to just be silent, stop, because none of us like that, right? Like none of us like those moments of just sheer quiet and
Right.
and those moments where we have to really be self-reflective of the things that are rambling around in our brain,
Right.
that would scare the crap out of us so many times.
And that's the part I would look at is like adding some of these, like whether, and Good Friday, I go, yeah, if there's a service, okay, go to it.
Yeah.
And I understand somebody's like, it's about like Fountain Springs you're doing. I get that, but
Yep.
we are doing so many other services
Yeah.
too. And I'd also say, once again, don't rely on the church to do all this for you.
Yeah.
There's things that you need to do on your own to prepare your heart
Yeah.
for this week. And so some of that is going and, like you said, finding a cross, finding some way to just kind of go, God, I humble myself.
Yep.
Because I'm reminded that this always brings back that it was my sin
Yeah.
that nailed you there. It was my shame. It is my mocking voice. It those kind of things of being reminded of
Yeah.
that and sitting in that. And because I think that humbles us.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I'd be like, before that even happened, Jesus was washing the disciples' feet and going, yeah, we should be serving. We should be caring. What are we doing in the midst of that?
Yeah.
And then I'm going, Mary's running and telling everybody what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
Like, as you said, like you're inviting people.
Yeah.
I just think there's multiple things
Yep.
to be going, have I done these things that I feel like Jesus kind of helped the disciples experience?
Yeah.
And I don't think those things are done now. And God obviously does it even beyond just
Yeah.
this one
Yep.
week out of the year, but especially this week, we being even more intentional.
Yeah. Here's one of the things that I'm always challenged by, and I think I've dealt with this my whole life. There are times where I am really bold and brash, and I'm like, we're gonna do this. And like you have an idea, like
Yep.
I mean, I've had moments where I've washed people's feet and that just wrecks you. If
Yep.
trust me, you're like, well, wait a minute, it wrecks you. Yeah, it wrecks you.
Yep.
Because there is a moment of humility as you're on a knee washing someone that you love's feet. It wrecks them because they were not expecting those emotions. But just even thinking about things like going somewhere or doing something, like for me, and I'll just be honest, like one of the things that I want to do right around Easter time is after a meal, we're gonna take communion as a family.
Yep. There you go.
And we're just gonna be like, hey, I just want us to be intentional right now. And I think the thing that frustrates me, and this is why I brought it up, I have thoughts, and sometimes I follow through with them, and sometimes I don't. And I don't want to miss moments where, man, God could just really be at play in something and just lead my family well.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have it all right to lead your family well. Just do something.
Yep.
And so that's huge in my thoughts.
Yeah, and I would say thinking through, like, what is it? Lead yourself, lead your family.
Yeah.
Just being able to go, God, I want to experience this. I want to be careful of this being, as we've said throughout this,
Yeah.
being another week.
Sure, absolutely.
And so that's the part is like, and when you, on a Sunday, and I would encourage you, go to one of our services.
Yeah.
Because it will have a lot of those elements, but you get to celebrate. This is the part I would say needs to be more corporate, is the celebration.
Yes, absolutely.
The believers gathering and celebrating what Jesus did.
Yeah.
That I go, yes, you can do it on your own, but it is 10 times more powerful and more, there's a powerful experience in that of doing that with
Yes.
a group of people.
No, fantastic.
And so, and having other people lead you in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it comes back to presence and you being able to be present in the moment rather than having to worry about dictating or just planning something, but just coming and experiencing.
Right.
And I think, we go back to how we started the conversation, like how they experienced, like Jesus was alive. Well, then those early disciples were so in fear, like they're going to blame us
Right.
that he's gone and we didn't do it,
Well, even Thomas is
Yeah.
going, nah,
Nope.
I don't believe it. Because he wasn't there
Yeah.
for some of the times where Peter was or Jesus was interacting with the disciples. And so Jesus shows up and goes, no touch. Like,
Yeah.
I'll show it to you. And so that's the part that was like, it's just, I think, let the Bible speak to you. That's why I say encourage you. Read the gospel during this time, especially that leading up to the crucifixion and the resurrection, and just seeing what Jesus did in the midst of that is crazy. And I'd recommend John, because John gives the most detail
I would agree.
of, like, starting chapter 12 all the way. You're just like, okay, wow.
Yeah,
this
and if
is
you
a
like
lot.
some really graphic stuff, Luke is a great one from the physician's point of view.
Yeah.
But
He's got more of the details kind of laid out.
But I agree, like what you're talking about. That's a great challenge. Like over the course of these next 3 weeks, read one of the Gospels and just sit in it. There's nothing wrong with that. I think
Take communion, and I think some of it is sitting in that darkness and silence. I think is another good thing to do. But then make sure you have a celebration component too. And I think if you do those things, I think you're lending yourself. And I would say maybe a fourth piece to that, or fifth, whatever number we're at here. But serving.
Like you're just making numbers up at this point.
Yeah, but I think serving, because I'm going, all right, read the Bible, take a time of communion, and sit in the moment of just feeling that darkness.
Yep, absolutely.
Solitude, just recognizing like, man, my life would be pretty full of doubt and loss if Jesus didn't do what he did.
Yeah.
So that's what Saturday would have felt like.
Sure. And maybe even it's a writing down component.
Right,
hey, I
write
want to
some of
write
that
down
down.
my feelings in this, or how I think I would have reacted. But
because I think I've heard this said, and I think it's so good, is like, we will never understand the full celebration until we recognize our sin and the fear and the doubts and the loss that we would have had if we were one of the disciples.
Sure.
And not only that, in our own lives, if Jesus is out of this, man, it's really confusing.
No, I would agree.
And then the last part is serving, like what he did with washing someone's feet. Like, help somebody else, invite somebody else, do something, so that way they can experience also what you're walking through and what God has done in your life. And so obviously we've got tickets available. Make sure that you get them.
Get them for the right location you want to go to. And
East has got services going on. West has got a ton of services going on. It will be an awesome time, but we'll be walking through the story of Jesus and celebrating who he is. But as we've talked through, go after some of these other things. But that's you leading yourself, you leading your family.
It really is, and it's just an opportunity to grow your faith in just a deeper way, in a more real way, I think. And it's practical. So, man, we look forward to seeing you at Easter. We're looking forward to celebrating.
It'll be an awesome time. It'll be so good. But I hope your heart and mind are ready to be ready to celebrate.
No, let's get after it. So we'll see you next time as we dive in.